Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly community talk. This is Canvas Your Way to Product Vision with Merissa Silk from Onfido. I will be your host tonight. I'm very excited because it's an interactive session. So we're going to be working together on Miro. And before handing over to Merissa, I'm going to take a moment to introduce myself and my company, Product People. I am Angelica Testini. I've joined Product People as Senior Product Manager. I'm Italian and I live in France, and what you see as my background is Antibes, the city I live in. I have always worked in product management in my career. I've had different roles though, because I love exploring things and I'm very curious. And I've spent the last 3 years working in different payments and billing missions and activities and products. Most of my career I've worked with Amadeus, which is in the travel industry. And I've been lucky enough to contribute to different projects and products and to work with different payment providers. I've also worked at WeShare, which is an urban mobility company in Germany, Go Student in the education industry, and Utopia Music in the music industry. So a few words about Product People. Whenever you see this fun onigiri logo, that's Product People. We are a product management consultancy company, and we help companies discover and deliver great products faster. We love and are very proud of our product management community, which counts more than 12,000 members now. We share knowledge generously, as we are doing today at this talk. And at the same time, we love getting our hands dirty. So we do the unglamorous work of interning PMs on missions that usually last a minimum of 3 months. We are pros at onboarding fast. We believe in delivering outcomes, and we align teams, stakeholders, people, anything that is needed. Some of the use cases in which we are most effective are growing the product team by 1 to 5 members usually, covering for a PM on a parental leave, or having a PM that is leaving or has left the company, knowing that especially in Europe, hiring usually takes a very long time, and hiring the right person is usually very difficult. So we jump in, we keep we keep the product, and we keep working on the product until the full-time hire is ready to start. We also handle temporary initiatives that are important and urgent. And we also appraise the product team or processes if needed. Some of the companies with which we've been successful are Zalando, Dr. Smile, WeShare, Omio, just to name a few. Now, sorry. This collage contains the pictures of our very diverse team. We are a remote first company, so we're based in different countries, mostly in Europe, and our legal entity is in Berlin. Each one of us comes with their own experiences, baggage, expertise, and we really love sharing, and we can really count on each other. Whenever you have a question, there's always someone who has done it in the past or can share anything. And this is by far the thing I love the most about working at Product People. As you can see, we have saved a spot for you because we are hiring. We are hiring product managers at all levels. So if you are an experienced product manager, or if you are willing to transition into product management, have a look at productpeople.join.com and apply. Now, that's it for me. I'm gonna hand over to Merissa Silk from Onfido for our talk. Again, it's going to be an interactive session, so we'll be working on Miro all together. If anyone has troubles logging in or getting Miro ready, do not worry. We'll keep the Miro available for about a month so that you can look at the recording of the session and do the workshop again later. That's all for me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to you, Merissa.
Great, thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here and doing this interactive session with all of you across whatever platform it is that you're streaming this workshop from. So yeah, I'm going to dive right into it because we have an action-packed session. So just hang on one second. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see Miro, and if you're not already in the Miro, you'll have plenty of chances to jump in before you have to start adding stickies or anything like that. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my very purple Miro. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with a brief introduction about the framework and the workshop. And then when it's time, basically, you'll have plenty of chance to jump into the Miro and find a place to start brainstorming. But for right now, all you need to do is sort of listen while I do just a small amount of introductions. If you're here in Zoom or following along on one of the other platforms, before we get going, what I'd love you to do is just like unmute, or even if you're by yourself in your apartment or in your office or whatever, I just want you to sort of like audibly say hi for a minute so that you sort of feel like you're in a workshop. So just, I'm going to pause and everyone sort of unmute, or wherever you are, just say hi audibly.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Awesome.
Hi.
Okay. Consider the ice broken. So now wherever you are, you can mute yourselves if you're here on Zoom, and we'll get back to it. So across my career, I've drawn inspiration from tons of product management frameworks, and one-page canvases are a personal favorite. So today's workshop is centered around a version of the product vision canvas that I developed when I was living in Sydney, and it's been road tested with over 20 teams. I really love this workshop because of how flexible it is. And the same format and prompts can be adapted for upcoming feature development, a new product idea, or a 3-year envisioning exercise. Hang on just one second. We're going to come in here for a second. Great. Okay. So your workshop can be run in like the classical sense, in person with a big wall and painter's tape and Post-it notes. Or it can be run online using a virtual whiteboarding tool like we're going to do today. Your brainstorm starts with the problem statement, then moves on to target audience, their needs, and features that might solve those needs. Then you're going to look at your product's unique value proposition, how you'll measure success, and what happy users sound like. And then you're going to finish by coming up with experience principles and your product vision statement. Usually I like to run this workshop in kind of like 4 or 6 hours so that the activity doesn't feel rushed. This leaves a ton of time for working in small groups, discussing, sharing back, affinity mapping, and then coming to alignment. Today's facilitation is going to be a little bit different. We're going to go through the entire workshop just like you would with your teams, but much faster. And I just want you to know that at some times it's going to feel uncomfortable, and that's totally okay. The emphasis here is getting a feel for the way the workshop runs and the format and the template, and definitely not on the quality of your brainstorm. All right, so for today's workshop, we're going to be brainstorming around an idea for a news app. Imagine an executive has approached you and said, let's help our readers engage with news in a more transparent way. And we're going to use the product vision canvas to help us consider this request from a product thinking perspective. And again, so that we can get through the full canvas, we're going to move really fast. We're going to omit certain steps like discussing and affinity mapping. And it's totally okay if you're not done with the previous prompt. Just keep moving along as best as you can. And if you have any questions, you can add them into the chat and we'll try and answer them at the end. Okay, hang on one second. All right. So your workshop will start by defining the problem space. You'll want to agree on a single problem to solve before moving along to other prompts. For some teams, defining the problem is the most difficult part of the canvas, And my hypothesis is that a lot of companies are used to spending time in the solution space and are less comfortable exploring the problems to solve. So if your team is struggling to clearly articulate the problem, you might want to run a separate session or conduct user research to explore potential problem and opportunity spaces. Okay. A problem statement is not a solution phrased another way. For example, give people access to diverse content is a solution and not a problem. Stanford's D School says that a good problem statement provides focus and frames the problem, inspires your team, informs criteria for evaluating competing ideas, empowers your team to make independent decisions, and prevents you from creating concepts that become all things to all people. So in short, the more specific your problem statement, the better. So here I have some examples of problem statements that participants wrote in previous times that I've run the workshop. Hang on here, so that you can take a look. So we're just about ready to jump into the interactive part. So here's what I invite you to do. Here, if you zoom out in the Miro, you can see like the whole Miro, and there's different versions of the product canvas, like that are blank and ready for your brainstorm. So here's what I recommend. Find a spot in the Miro. So this is that moment. Practice adding a sticky, practice adding a shape. You can interact with this Miro the way that you want for the purpose of this workshop. So just find your spot, and we are going to get started with the brainstorm. So in just a moment, I'm going to put 3 minutes on the timer and try to come up with a single problem statement for the new news app concept and use the stickies to add to the board. This problem statement is going to be the basis for the rest of your brainstorm. And if you're having trouble coming up with one on your own, feel free to use one of the examples from where we were before, just over here. So try to come up with your own problem statement. If it's too much, you're not a news expert, or you're not feeling particularly creative, totally fine. Borrow one of these and just put it into your spot in the Miro. So I'm going to put 3 minutes on this timer. And then we can come back and we'll keep working through the template together. I'm going to see if I can pipe in some brainstorming music for all of you. All right, time to keep moving. So once your problem is defined, consider your audience. Who are we solving this problem for? The aim is to identify a single group or maximum 2 groups who will be using your product to solve the defined problem. These groups could be different to segments or roles, but often align with personas. And if you don't define the problem and users up front, you kind of risk building the wrong solution. So I'm going to put 2 more minutes on the timer so that you can brainstorm the main audience for your news app. All right, we're going to keep moving on. So now consider what those users need from your product. What are their pains or their jobs to be done? And when I run this with my teams, I really like to encourage using I statements so that you and your team members can build empathy with the users. I'm going to put 2 more minutes on the timer so that you can brainstorm what your audience needs. Yeah, feel free to find your own space. I see some of you are making your own canvases all over the Miro, and that's absolutely what you're here to do. All right. Prompt number 4, features, is usually the most fun part because it creates this wild flurry of stickies. I found that this prompt is usually the easiest for teams, especially when they're more used to being in that solutions mode. So have a think about what features or services would solve your users' needs. And keep in mind that what's defined here does not translate one for one onto your roadmap. These features would just be the starting point for prototyping and research and would typically be done as part of a discovery phase. I'm going to put 3 minutes on the timer so that you can brainstorm features. And then we'll sort of move on to some of the trickier parts of the canvas. Awesome, already. All right, let's keep going. So hopefully you're getting the hang of things. Some of you have found your own spots in this big Miro board. Some of you look like you're just kind of following along. Totally fine. This is your workshop, so definitely get involved however is best for you in this moment. So once you've identified the features, the unique value proposition is next. And what you want to do is try and come up with 2 or 3 UVPs, which will then ultimately start to shape your future go-to-market plans. So ask your team, or right now in today's workshop, think about what makes your product special. How is your product better than what users are already doing? Why should they use your product, and why might they pay for it? I'm going to put 2 minutes on the timer so that you can brainstorm the key UVPs. And thanks to those of you in the chat who are calling out the playlist. I made this specifically for this workshop, so glad to hear you're liking it. All right, off you go with the UVPs. Okay, so now we're gonna jump ahead to the future, sort of think about the future from a couple of different perspectives. So first, let's talk about metrics. So what metrics do you think that you should track so that you're able to know if your product or your feature is successful? What's the expected value for the user or for your business, and how are you going to measure that? So I'm going to put 2 minutes on the timer. So we're going to brainstorm metrics, and then we're going to think about what happy users might sound like. So first, metrics, okay? All right, now you're going to look at success from a different angle. What would happy users say about your product? This is meant to be a bit of fun. And this is one of my favorite prompts in the Canvas. So similar to the needs brainstorm, I really like to write these as quotes from the point of view of the user. So I'm going to put 2 minutes on the timer, have a bit of fun, and think about what a happy user might sound like when they're leaving comments for you in social media or writing app store reviews. What do you hope is being said about your product? All right, two more minutes.
Go on.
All right, so once the main prompts of the board are filled in, it's time to come up with your experience principles. Experience principles, sometimes called design principles, reflect your product's core values and priorities. And ideally, your experience principles would be based on research and should incorporate what the team has already learned about your users' needs and wants. And they should also reflect an understanding of the business needs and brand positioning. So why do you need experience principles? Well, they can help your team align, make decisions, and focus. And you can use your experience principles to support your decision-making and reduce misunderstandings within your team and with your stakeholders. So following along with our news app idea, here are some example experience principles. Like the needs and quotes, I often like to phrase these from the user's point of view to continue to build that empathy. I recommend coming up with 3 experience principles for your product. More than that is too hard to remember and starts to become overwhelming to use if you want to really lean on these for your decision making. And it's definitely okay to start with 1 set of principles and then refine or adjust when more information comes available, for example, following some user research. So here I have some examples that I pulled from Google and Microsoft just for a bit of extra inspiration. So I'm going to put 3 minutes on the timer. This probably won't be enough time for you to write experience principles, but again, you can always borrow some of the ones that were written by previous participants, or you can always come back after the workshop and finish them off. So 3 minutes on the timer, come up with 1, 2, or 3 experience principles to go along with your product idea. Just going to reboot the music, hang on. While I was in there, here's that link for all of you in case you want to use this with your teams. made it. 1 through 8 prompts are done, and we're here at the last one, but probably the most important. So finally, number 9, it's time for your product vision statement. A good product vision is both aspirational and actionable. It should describe the why behind your product and illustrate the value that your product brings to your users. So alongside your experience principles, a clear product vision statement will help you and your team make decisions, focus, prioritize, and work towards your goals. The truth is that you can use a templated approach for your product vision statement, and I've popped the sort of classic Jeffrey A. Moore template down here at the bottom for your reference. But for me, I like to advocate for something shorter and therefore easier to remember, like this one. Our vision is to burst filter bubbles with equal, unbiased access to news. A great vision statement can be recalled by every member of your extended team. And like lots of other elements of the canvas, it's totally okay if your vision statement isn't perfect on the first try. It can be refined as your team begins to work on defining and delivering your product experience. So we're nearly at the end of the brainstorming part of this workshop. So I'm going to put a final 3 minutes on the timer so that you can brainstorm your product vision statement. All right, you made it, or we made it to the end of our brainstorm. So imagine now that you've run this workshop with your teams, what happens next? So I really like to create a digital one-pager of the canvas where I summarize and I prioritize the ideas from the brainstorm. And you might be wondering, like, why a one-pager? especially when, there isn't kind of like one page in the context of something like Miro or Mural or one of these other whiteboarding tools. But the reason is simple. It's really hard to get all of the ideas, especially from a big workshop with a lot of people, into a single page, even if you cheat, reduce the font size. But for me, personally, I think that distilling really big, complex ideas into a simple and readable artifact that your whole team can use is sort of part of what makes the PM job fun. So when I'm presenting this workshop, I'm always asked, like, what should it look like when it's done, Merissa? And here it is. And I promise that creating this one-page artifact really is a worthwhile use of your time. So streamlining the workshop content will help you begin to start forming a point of view about your product, the problem space, potential solutions, and the overall vision. So once you've summarized your canvas, let it sit for a day or two and then reread it and have a think. Does it reflect your discussion? Does it tell a story? Is it inspirational to you, your team, and your stakeholders? And once you're happy with where you've landed, share it back with your team and collaborators from other teams or different areas of the business and actively collect that feedback. Your product canvas should become a living document and a reminder of what you're working towards and why. So I'm going, before we take questions from the team, I just want to leave you with one final tip for facilitating this workshop, and it's all about the timing of things. So you could run this workshop as soon as a new idea comes up and then validate the assumptions in your canvas as part of discovery. Or you could come into the workshop with insights from product analytics and user research, and then build the canvas around what you already know about your users. But for me, I like to run it twice. First, after a new idea is presented, when there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and then a second time after we've run more in-depth research to validate whether we were on the right track. And don't be afraid to refine your canvas as you continue with your discovery and your planning. I like to refer to the canvas frequently, especially when making critical decisions or aligning with stakeholders. So thanks very much for participating. I hope you've had a bit of fun. I have many links that I've included here in the Miro board that I hope will be useful to you. I could see before someone in the chat asked about books, and I don't have any links to books, but I have links to plenty of articles. And of course, my doorbell right at that minute. So I'll be right back.
Well, thank you very much, Merissa. I hope everybody is able to keep up. I have definitely enjoyed trying and thinking about an app that would solve my problem.
Hi, sorry, of course, we almost made it to the end without a disruption. So do me a favor, like all good product things, leave me some feedback directly here in Miro, or you can use this form. And now I'm going to stop sharing so that maybe I can take some of your questions. Sorry, it's a little noisy now.
Maybe I can start with one question. I have a curiosity. So first of all, as I was saying, I've really much enjoyed trying this, and it has really triggered my creativity, I would say. So I will definitely use it in one of my next session at my current work. I was wondering, how do you run it usually when you are in a session with other people? Do you let them brainstorm separately and then put the information collected together, or try to brainstorm together on each piece and build the sticky notes together?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the answer varies a little bit depending on whether or not you're running like a synchronous workshop, like with everyone 6 hours in a room or in a Miro board together, or if you're trying to make use of different kind of asynchronous and synchronous formats. Let's talk about the synchronous version, because that one's, I think, more straightforward. So usually what I try to do, of course, it varies based on the size of your team, but what I would do is kind of divide people into small groups and let them work their way around the canvas in those small groups and kind of get them sort of writing things on stickies and then sharing back in their small groups. And then after a couple of prompts, then ask the small groups to share back with the bigger group, right? So you're kind of individually writing on stickies, sharing with the smaller group, and then sharing with a broader group until you make your way till the end. Oftentimes it's like a full day exercise, but I've even had workshops that sort of took 2 or 3 days. It's kind of a lot, but I really recommend trying to run it in this kind of asynchronous sync format, especially if your team is either remote first or hybrid right now, as many teams are. So what you can do is you can get people to kind of brainstorm by themselves. You can get them to do it directly into Miro, or if you're worried about groupthink or kind of that hippo, like highest paid person in the room kind of interaction, you can ask your team members and your stakeholders sort of fill in a form that kind of you can transfer into the Miro. And then you as the PM can kind of asynchronously do things like affinity map and label the kinds of themes, and then bring people into the Miro for a synchronous workshop where you get them to kind of read, build on top of what's already in the board, and then use kind of dot voting to try and see where there's like alignment or maybe some need for discussion, and then use the time in the sort of meeting for discussing the topics where there isn't so much alignment. If you want to use this template, you can go into the Miroverse and search for product vision canvas. And there you can just copy over this template, and there's instructions for this kind of asynchronous, synchronous format.
Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Awesome. Were there other questions that people had that have come through either in the chat or that you want to ask now? I'm happy to field them. I just wanted to mention that if this canvas is like, doesn't exactly suit your need, that's totally fine, because if you go to the Miro template, I think I've cross-linked to like 5 to 8 other canvases. So if this one isn't the right one, then maybe there's another canvas in the Miroverse already waiting for you. Any more questions? It's about to get noisy in here, apparently. All right, well, if there aren't, we'll wait around a few more minutes and see if more questions come through in the chat box, or if people want to join in here. As Angelica said at the start, this Miro will be available for the next month or so, so through the start of June, and you can replay the workshop and try it out and make use of the different kinds of links and resources that are available here. And if any questions come up for you while you're watching the recording, for example, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm happy to take any questions or provide facilitation tips at a later point.
Awesome. Well, then, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks to the people who are here in the Zoom, and to anyone who's following in streaming, and to anyone who will watch it later. Thank you very much, Merissa, for sharing your knowledge generously. We're definitely gonna benefit from this session. We do have regular talks like this one. So if you liked it and want to know more about product management, well, let's meet again, same time, same place next week.